Welcome back, everybody, to the Squatchers Lounge podcast. That's right, we are live tonight, right here via YouTube. Thank you to StreamYard for streaming it for us. Wow, what can I tell you? It is time to get it back on. That's right, the preview of season 9, back to the beginning. That's right, tonight we're going to talk about Roger Patterson and the Patterson Gimlin Film, and just why, oh why, is it still holding up after 50 plus years? We've also got a Quasi rewind from the great Dean Cooper and a Bigfoot Campfire story that's appropriately connected to tonight's topic. That's right. And welcome everybody. I am your host, the Reverend Jeff Kelly, and we are back. That's right, as promised. So in for those of you who don't really know the backstory that goes along with, everything that has gone along there in Bluff Creek, in 1964, we can go back even further than that. In 1958, while some logging crews were in the area actually constructing logging roads, a giant humanoid type footprints began to appear in the area. One of the first finders of those footprints was a man by the name of Jerry Crew. And through some prodding and some information and learning in 1958, they were finally able to make a plaster of Paris concoction that was able to sit in the ground long enough to solidify, become firm, and actually take an impression of the footprint that was in the ground. And if we go out to the internet here, I am sure that we can find exactly what we are looking for. Just take a second here. I've learned that if I use it directly off of the internet, that it is not a violation of copyright. Speaking of violation of copyright, some jackass decided to post a copyright infringement against my YouTube channel for a file that I did like 7 years ago. So you know what? This show isn't for children. Fuck you, asshole. Some Frenchie, I can't even tell you who they are. The video has been removed. It was for a 2-minute fringe news video, but they've put a solid strike against my channel. I'm not even sure that I can't even look at the content because YouTube has removed it. So I don't even know whether or not they own the content or not. My only option is to retaliate and counterclaim, or just wait until December 27th for it to go away. And well, as you can tell, fuck YouTube too. Anyhow, there's a picture of Jerry Crew with that giant humanoid type footprint. And as you can see, it was definitely a big deal all around the Bluff Creek area, the Tuolumne County, Humboldt County, the Six Rivers National Park. These large footprints had been found. Now, of course, Dr. Meldrum has a copy of this footprint in his collection, and unbeknownst to other people around that same time frame, Ray Wallace was a construction manager in the area. And he was known to be a prankster. But if you take a look at the footprints that Ray Wallace had created to strap to his boots and leave tracks all over the area, they are by no means even close to what the Jerry Crew foot looks like, which is why they coined it Bigfoot. Now, over the next several years, from 1958 all the way through to 1964, they had been finding these tracks in places. Different events led to different things. There were some fuel barrels that were knocked into the creek up above Louse Camp that wouldn't make any sense for somebody like Ray Wallace to do. Ray Wallace was a construction manager. He doesn't have time to clean up fuel spills. He doesn't have time to clean up those types of pranks. I'm not even sure why he would have been leaving the giant footprints in the woods as a prank to people. I think that would drive off more people than it would keep them intrigued and staying and working for him. I mean, if there's an 8-foot giant that's going to come into camp and kick the crap out of me, I don't think I want to work for you either. But again, I digress. Now, in 1964, in the Bluff Creek area there on the Klamath, outside of the Klamath River, there was a flooding event. Apparently, the creeks had log jammed up and created a serious wall of flooding behind it. Now, no one really knows how long the flooding had been backing up against the Bluff Creek itself there against the Klamath. But it had been backing up so long and long enough that it actually blew out part of the mountain and created a new drainage for Bluff Creek out into the Klamath River. And that is the same exit of Bluff Creek into the Klamath River that you'll find today, that you see all of the famous people standing next to as you drive through the area. I'm looking for the I can't see. Sometimes I have just a hard time remembering what it is that I wanted to be looking for. Anyhow, 1964, the flood came through the area and just completely washed out sand beds. All the floating debris floated downriver, so much so that the guys had to bring the bulldozers back in and cut new roads down to be able to unjam the log jams that were creating the flooding back into Bluff Creek in the first place. Now, what does this do? This creates a completely new environment with all new growth in the lower areas of the Bluff Creek drain basin that weren't there previously, at least not for a few hundred years since the last flooding event. And that's where we get the setup for the 1967 video that came right across one of those flooded out sandbanks. That's what was left over from the flood, and that's where the Patterson and Gimlin actually came across the creature. Now, although it's been decades since the Patterson Gimlin film turned the Northwest legend Bigfoot into a household name, the footage and stories behind it still remain fascinating after 50 years. The filmmakers and namesakes of the film were the two former rodeo men from Yakima County in Washington. One, Bob Gimlin, still lives there, and Roger Patterson died in 1972. They shot the footage off of the banks of Bluff Creek in Northern California. Bigfoot's seen in the film for less than 1 minute, but one frame 352, has pretty much become the universal symbol for Sasquatch. And if you follow the link for that, of course, that's the infamous look back picture of Patty as she's crossing in front of the debris there on the sandbank. Now, apparently, as the story goes, when they originally came up upon Patty, she was on the near side of the creek close to them, and that's when Roger Patterson's horse reared up and knocked him off of it, and he went digging for the camera inside of it. She then got up and crossed the rest of the creek and started moving him towards the sandbar, which is where she was filmed here. Bluff Creek's never really that deep. I've been in it myself. It's, knee deep is lucky in the summertime. Before the snow melt in the springtime, I'm sure it's much higher, but in October, it probably wouldn't have been much more than ankle or calf deep to begin with. Now, one of the things people talk about in this particular picture, too, is the abnormally long arms that everybody talks about the length of the arms as though they're very strange and out of proportion, which I agree that definitely the length between the shoulder and the elbow is a awfully long distance between them. And then again, from the elbow all the way down to the wrist, as it seems like another long distance. But what I always find strange about Sasquatch videos, especially ones that I kind of can stand behind and believe have some authenticity, are the weird legs. When you see a gorilla walking around on two legs, they have these short, stubby little legs that just kind of pitter patter up and down as they move around, by their hips. But in this particular frame, you can definitely see the muscle structure between the calf and the thigh. People say, "Where's the butt?" I see a butt right here in 352. Does the butt crack come up the middle of your lower back? I've never seen a butt crack up well, I knew one lady that had two butt cracks, and it was really weird. But besides her, I've never really seen a butt crack in the lower back before. It would definitely be down underneath the buttocks where a butt crack should actually be. But what might be surprising after half a century of advancement in film and costume technology is that this footage is yet still to be officially debunked. Furthermore, it's concrete proof for Bigfooters around the globe that Sasquatch is in fact real. At this point, I'm confident that I can be short standing on a sandbar with Roger and Bob and witness it myself, said Jeffrey Meldrum. Meldrum is a professor of anatomy and anthropology at Idaho State University and is known for being one of the few academics to openly study Sasquatch. It's all easy to say. Obviously, that's a man in a fursuit until you see it up against a man in a fursuit, he said. Now, we want to go back here and we'll take a look at tonight's opening title picture. As you can see, they are actually going to take the 20th Century Fox movie Planet of the Apes costume and put it up against cutouts of the actual Patterson Gimlin film and give them up for some comparison. Now, the film evidence, Meldrum points no further than the Planet of the Apes franchise, the first film that came out around the same time as the Patterson Gimlin film and won an Oscar for makeup. He specifically calls up the scene in the sauna of the 1970 sequel beneath the Planet of the Apes, as the apes are bare-chested. A few walk around the steamy room. Meldrum says these costumes are at the bleeding edge of film technology, and he's not impressed. They look like big, hairy Pillsbury doughboys, he says. Meldrum compares the Patterson Gimlin film, to which he shows to his anatomy students. He asks them to point out the different landmarks in surface anatomy that they see in Patty. They start at the head, and they can see the trapezius, they can see the deltoid, erector spine down the back, shoulder blades moving under the skin. The quads contract when they're supposed to contract, he said almost breathlessly. None of which ever shows up in a cheap, off-the-shelf costume. I mean, I always call these saggy squatch or bag squatches because that's what they look like. They look like they're wearing a fur sleeping bag with a mask on. Now, costume manufacturer Philip Morris claimed that before he died, Morris gave talks about how he sold Roger Patterson the suit seen on this film. He talked featuring examples of the faked Bigfoot was featured on Travel Channel's Making Monsters. However, the most relevant proof of Bigfoot's existence for some serious researcher isn't easily seen in the film. It's what Patty left behind. That's right, the really big footprints. A few miles outside of Sandy, Oregon, Cliff Barackman dug around his garage, pulling out casts of massive footprints and handprints from seemingly every corner. Barackman said that easily has one of the largest Bigfoot print collections in the world. Cliff is best known to host the Animal Planet's Finding Bigfoot as a professional Sasquatch researcher. For more than 2 decades, he's seen a lot of fake Bigfoot prints. But he does say that the Patterson Gimlin ones aren't so easily dismissed. The trailing leg of the creature shows a great flexibility of the foot, Barackman said. There's a few frames where he can see Patty take her heel off the ground, but yet keep the entire foot in touch with the ground. Along with the footage of Patty, where a clear track of prints that were captured by photos later cast, these footprints exhibit the flexibility Barackman was explaining, its unique characteristics that Professor Meldrum has reached for years. One of the footprints showed a very distinctive pressure ridge, a push-off that comes about as a result of the very flexible midfoot, he said. To him, this ridge is a smoking gun. He's seen the same unique feature in foot samples across decades and continents. You know, in China in 1969 and 1995, Patterson Gimlin in 1967, and Mill Creek, Washington's 1991, all kind of have that same flexibility towards the mid part of the foot where they're both Jeffrey Meldrum and Cliff Barackman admit until there's a Bigfoot body, though, then all the research in the entire Patterson Gimlin film will be up for debate. If Patty is just a guy in a furry ape suit, then it's one of the greatest hoaxes of all time, on par with the image of Nessie and Loch Ness. And if it is in fact real, then Patty will upend everything we understand about apes and evolution. What is true? Half a century later, the Patterson Gimlin film turned a Northwest legend into a global icon. The film has endured because it reminds us that there are still some things in the world we can never know for sure. All right, well, let's take us a quick break here and get us in with some quasi theory from a quasi scientist, Mr. Dean Cooper. And now, quasi theories from a quasi scientist with your host, Dean Cooper.
Mantra. Back in early December of 2016, when the world was young, or at least younger, I created a mantra for Squatchers. I did it because the Reverend Jeff asked me to. In a particularly peculiar case of synchronicity, there was an episode of Finding Bigfoot that aired a bit after I invented the mantra, in which Renee Holland comes up with the identical mantra. That episode was recorded earlier in the year, but, and I swear to the gods that this is true, I knew nothing of it until after I also wrote that mantra. If you want to hear the mantra, it's on my YouTube channel with the title, A Squatcher's Mantra. But that is all beside the point of this quasi-dissertation, in which I will tell you the theory behind the term mantra. You all know what mantra means in common usage. You repeat a word or a series of words damn near endlessly, hoping that it gets you what you want, such as a Sasquatch, or makes something go away, possibly a scary Sasquatch. The real meaning of the word mantra is much more profound. Mantra is a Sanskrit word consisting of the root word man, which means to think, and the suffix tra, which means the prefix is a tool or instrument. The word man is also the root word for manas, the Sanskrit word for mind. So a mantra is a tool of thought. In practice, a mantra shapes the mind, shapes it in the form of what a given mantra is designed for. Now, this mind we're talking about is not the physical mind. It is not all that wobbly, globby mass inside your skull. No, it is something non-physical. It is what the ancient Greeks called the psyche. The Greeks, along with most of the ancient world, said man was composed of a body, or sarke, as in sarcophagus, the psyche, or soul, and the pneuma, as in pneumatic, or spirit. Our spirit is our real self. It uses the soul to think and tell the body what to do. The soul is non-physical in the sense that it exists in a higher order reality than the body. The spirit is in an even higher order reality. That's the simplistic version anyways. The soul is the equivalent of the Sanskrit manas, or mind, and we all know how wiggly our minds are. A mantra is used to focus the mind on a specific intent and stop all those wiggly jiggly thoughts. Now, there are mantras devised to shape your mind for all sorts of purposes, including naughty purposes. Using naughty mantra for naughty purposes is called black magic. Doing black magic will make some very bad karma for you. Aside from having a bad time in future incarnations, it will land you in an astral hell for a long period of astral time. And astral time can seem like an eternity. I did 2 different quasi-dissertations on astral hells. They are not nice places, and technically, those naughty purposes include trying to get rich, get laid, get a pony, i.e., anything selfish. Most mantras, though, are intended to quiet your mind enough to allow the light of your spirit to come through, thereby illuminating your mind and letting some of that light come into this lower plane where we live. Normally, this is where I would end with a bad pun or some witticism, but I'll just say this. Om Shanti Shanti Om. You may read the text of this on my blog at bydean.com. That's BHAIDIN.com.
Barahuta Milagunes. Okay, let's give a shout out here to the people hanging out in the live hideout. Let's see who's here this week. There's the Reverend Timothy McCoon. Hello there, Tim. Glad you are with us. To Miss Natalie Smith. I wonder if Wheezy's watching out, hanging out with us tonight. And there's the Quasi man himself, Mr. Dean Cooper. Hello, Mr. Shane Barber. He's been checking out all those Bigfoot Campfire stories still up there on YouTube that I haven't taken down quite yet. Let's see here. Who else is on the list tonight to say hello? Well, there's the Duncans, Aaron and Mary. I'm sure they are hanging out tonight. Frank G. Well, hello there. Have you found any pixies or leprechauns yet? I still want to see your bike after you got it back. You can see any pictures of that thing yet? The Viking Todd Rife is in the house, as well as World Bigfoot Radio. Hello, World Bigfoot Radio. Let's see here. Mrs. Bella Allegria. Hello there, Bella. Glad you are back on the house. Let's see here. Dixie Q. Hello, Dixie Q. I just watched Austin Powers, and it just reminds me of Dixie Normus. I don't know why. For some reason. Let's see here. Moving on down. There's Cameron Young, our Canadian researcher. Hello there, young man. Glad you are with us as well. Let's see here. Fred Flintstoner. Hello there from Canada. Glad you made it along for the ride tonight. Let's see. Moving on down. Here is, oh God, MC Addicts. Hello there, MC Addicts. Glad you made it. I almost dyslexiated you all the hell up, so I'm glad I took my time to read that one. Let's see here. Barackman, the track expert, the guy that casted an entire fake trackway. You know, I'm with you there, World Bigfoot Radio. I mean, I've talked to Cliff a few times where they're discussing the Elba trackway, or with the London trackway, if you want to call it that. And I've never been able to get a straight answer out of Cliff at all. The last time he was leaning towards it being a hoax, but it never really decided. And now I see that they have their podcast, so we may never actually get a straight answer out of that. Who knows? It's very, very strange. Moving down the line here, and that looks like we've got those people in. I'm sure Joe Huseman is out there hiking the trails and listening to us tonight. And my son Sean is chilling at work doing the same thing. So there we are, Mr. Shane Barber. Hello, right back at you. Okay, so let's give you a chance to take a peek at what it was I was looking at earlier. The article I was coming from was from opb.org. The Patterson Gimlin film, of course, makes it there's the comparison that I was taking a look at. Beneath the Planet of the Apes from 20th Century Fox from 1970 versus the Patterson Gimlin subject of 1967. If the suit from the 1967 Patterson Gimlin film was capable of being built in 67, don't we think that 20th Century Fox would have built them in 1970? That really does kind of become the question. Old Philip Morris said that he had made the costume, but couldn't reproduce it. Not even close to reproducing it. I mean, it was like a ginger baggy squatch. It was one of the most ridiculous attempts. I mean, hell, Leroy Blevin's attempt to redo the Patterson subject suit was 1,000 times better than anything that Philip Morris ever put out. And the Beneath the Planet of the Apes here, that suit wouldn't have put up with the type of movement and things that they were trying to get. The second image that they had down here was this pressure ridge that we were talking about in different foot casts that have been found across the time. From 67, the Patterson subject has a pressure line here directly in the center, which is what they like to try and call the mid-tarsal break or ridge or whatever. Mill Creek, Washington in 1991, they found another cast that kind of had the same thing, and the 1995 cast in China. Now, the 1967 cast, if we take a look at Bluff Creek, and pop over here to the images for a moment, what you're going to find in that particular picture as we look at it is that it is actually not a pressure ridge at all. What actually causes that indention in the foot is the fact that there's a branch that runs directly under this particular track and lifts part of it back up, which is what that actual line is there. Most likely the foot pushed all the way down into the ground, but the greenness of the tree of the sapling that's in the ground there actually pushed back up, which is what results in the indentation in that part of the foot. What if Meldrum got it wrong all along based upon, impertinent information? I don't really know, but I don't think that that's a case to say that this It looks the same as this. I mean, I have to go back over here and make sure y'all are looking at the right thing now. Okay, because you weren't looking at the right thing when I was trying to do that. Now, what happened after the film? That becomes a lot of the question as well. It wasn't that they hit it. As a matter of fact, they went back out and told everybody that they were down there. John Green came down, Al Hodgkins came down, a whole bunch of people who were already involved in the area came down to look for other evidence that would corroborate the story of this film and its authenticity. A lot of people were looking for it to be a hoax. As everybody has heard, this wasn't their first rodeo, as they say, and it most definitely wasn't. But at the same token, if you put yourself in bear country to take videos of bears and then you get a video of a bear, is it really that surprising that you got a video of a bear? If you put yourself in Bigfoot territory looking for Bigfoot in places where tracks of Bigfoot have been found, in situations where Bigfoot have been heard and possibly even seen, then why is it so surprising that you captured a Bigfoot on film? And it wasn't like the camera was brightly loaded and ready for 30 minutes of brand new film so they could just follow this creature up and down the waterway there. I mean, they literally had 1 minute of film left, and thank God they actually even had that, because without it, we would kind of be stuck for what it would be. Yeah, I mean, the way these costumes move in the sauna is absolutely ridiculous. They just look like they literally just look like sag squatches. And for those that say that the techniques and the availability was there, and that the great FX masters, they put it together and they fooled the whole world for 50 years. Somebody would have taken responsibility for it before they died. No one's ever found the suit. No one's ever found a piece of the suit. No one's ever found the mask. As it was described by the guy who said he wore it, Bob Hieronymus, that it was an old football helmet, shoulder pads, hip waders, all covered in horsehair, sewn together to make it look like a monkey suit. I don't know. And why, I just, for me, the film itself doesn't prove that Bigfoot exists, because we are going to need a body to prove that Bigfoot exists. But the film definitely lends credence that in that area there are definitely Sasquatch amongst them. One of the things that people talk about, well, why hasn't any video been caught that's just as exciting as the Patterson Gimlin film? And I some are, some aren't. I mean, it was the video technology of the day didn't really get to a point until recently. 6, 7, 8 megapixel cameras are really starting to change the thing. Well, why haven't we got a picture of a Sasquatch on a game cam? Because we're taking postage stamp sized pictures of the forests with all these game cams, and they're being used improperly. I don't know about you, but if I'm looking for deer and pictures of deer, I'm going to first track and find tracks of deer, and then I'm going to put a camera on it to see what those deer look like. Most people don't ever find Bigfoot track 1 and cover an area in cameras and then complain for 5 years that they never got a picture of a Bigfoot. Well, first you'd have to find tracks of a Bigfoot to lend evidence to the fact that Bigfoot traveled that area, and then you decide where to start putting cameras to capture those animals. There's lots of things that are just as elusive as Sasquatch. You go into Florida, and the Florida panther is just as elusive. Matter of fact, I've probably heard or been near more Bigfoot in Florida than I have Florida panther in the 15 years that I researched it down there. And there were summers where I would spend every other weekend camping. I mean, it was just one of those things. And, there are plenty of large mammal animals that we know for sure are out there that are just as elusive as the Sasquatch that we don't get any pictures of. The Florida bear, there's tons of Florida bear that are out in the Ocala National Forest, yet you can't go to YouTube and find a whole bunch of videos of Florida black bears. Why is that? Well, again, because we're not utilizing the proper techniques to capture those elusive animals on film. Personally, I don't know. I used to think that I'd like to see a body before I die. Now I don't need one. I don't really care whether people believe me or not anymore. As silly as that sounds, I know, probably horrible, but honestly, I really don't care if people believe me or not. I am not here to convince anyone else. I am just here to share my opinions and express my beliefs and try and help some others. As the Reverend of the Bigfoot world says, wade your way through the knee-high bullshit that is the world of Sasquatch. And that, my friends, as they say, is going to wrap it up for this edition of the Squatchers Lounge podcast. But we do have the Bigfoot Campfire story where two cowboys see Bigfoot in Bluff Creek. I want to thank every one of you guys out here for coming and watching live tonight. I know it's been a couple of weeks. I will be back next week with a spooky Halloween edition of the Sasquatchers Lounge podcast, and that will lead us into the fan edition weeks. That's right. The last couple of months of the year, we get fans involved with the show. So if you would like to come on the show, even if it's just for part of a show and talk about anything, you send me a message and we'll see if we can't get it done for you. So with that, everybody, thanks for watching. Enjoy this campfire story, and we will see you next week. May the Squatch be with you. What the hell is that? I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that was a Bigfoot. Let me tell you a story. These stories are based upon true events. Welcome to another Bigfoot Campfire story. As you may know, from time to time, I dig out a classic that just begs for its own telling. And well, this one is way past due. Roger and Bob set out from Yakima, Washington on a week-long quest to investigate Bigfoot tracks and sightings around Bluff Creek, California. This is their story. Well, I'd gotten a call from the guys down in California. The Bigfoot have been moving through the area of Bluff Creek for a few years now, and I've been determined to capture one on film. I've been hunting these things for a long time now. I even wrote a book about it, and of the telling of the stories and tales from British Columbia and Washington State. We never really thought a place like Bluff Creek would even hold the critters until 1958. A fellow by the name of Gerald Crew found a Bigfoot track and cast it near a bridge. In fact, that's where the name Bigfoot actually comes from, during the logging construction of a bridge in that same area. Since then, the tracks and sightings have flooded in from the area, and I decided it was time to get this creature on film once and for all. So I started making arrangements to look into that matter once again. I called my good friend Bob up and asked if I could borrow him and some horses for a week search into Bluff Creek, California. Now, Bob wasn't too keen on the idea at first, but after some convincing, he at least agreed to come along and bring us horses so we could get around. Well, I'd recently received another call telling me that they had found 3 different sets of tracks near the same area, and it was there that we were set off to investigate. I brought with me a rented filming camera just like they use for TV and 2 100-foot rolls of film. We had finally gotten down into the area and we camped at a place called Happy Camp. We had searched the area, seeing if we could find any tracks. Sadly, by the time we arrived, the rain had all but wiped out the tracks. So we spent a couple of days on horseback searching the area and decided on the 3rd day to move camp a bit closer to Bluff Creek itself. The logging roads had the area quite easy to get around, sort of. There were large tracts of road from one area to another, but after that, it got pretty wild again. We located a camp near Louse Camp, And we had to stage it up because Laos was full of logging crews at the time, but we were off the main logging road going in. By the time we had camp all set up, it was late in the day, so Bob and I took a short ride around the area, then went back to camp to make dinner and sleep off. Cool chill of the rain. Being October, the night chill got into the 40s, so we kept the fire burning all night. Well, the next morning I awoke to an empty camp. Bob had already set off for a ride, and it was nearly 10 a.m. when Bob returned, and I asked him which area he'd covered for his morning ride. Well, I decided that we'd like to recheck that area that we had saw the evening before, so I grabbed the camera and checked the film. The area was so beautiful, I had already burned through 76 feet of film, just taking film of the surrounding area shots in the forest of Bob and I. Hopefully it'll make the movie someday. Well, I loaded up the saddlebags and I mounted my horse and off we went to explore the watershed. We had come down off of the ridge where the old road had been, and we hit a log jam. That's when the horses began to act all weird. This was definitely abnormal. That was when we first caught the glimpse of the creature. It was crouched down by that log jam, and it rose up. When it did, my horse kicked and rose up on its front legs and threw me back off the ground. I quickly got up and grabbed my film camera and began to run after the creature. There it was in the viewfinder. It was all covered in hair about 60 yards from me, quickly getting away, so I had to get closer. Well, I ran across the shallow creek and I up a little bit of an area and I braced myself up against a tree, got the creature back into the viewfinder. I'm no photographer and I had no idea if this thing was in focus, but it was running and definitely filming. Well, just as I got it really in focus, Bob crossed the creek on horseback, and that's when the creature looked right back at the camera. It's so hard to see through the viewfinder. I can't really see the creature itself without it. Well, Bob was much closer, and the creature turned and quickly started to walk upstream, and that's when the film ran completely out. Click, click, click went the film roll in the device. Well, Bob started off to follow the creature upstream, but there I was with no horse, no rifle. So I yelled for him to come back and wait till I could get my horse back at least. Finally, I got the horses straight. The film roll changed. By then, the creature was long gone. Bob and I had taken the footage of the tracks the creature had left. The sandbar was a result of the flood in 1964 and had made the perfect substructure to hold the tracks of this amazing beast. Was it some sort of people? Some kind of pre-human? Was it a monkey man? I have no idea, but we have to document everything or people won't believe us at all. Well, Bob and I spent the better part of another week meeting people in the area to show them what happened. We called my friend Al, and he got in touch with a man by the name of John Green, who brought a friend named Renee and another fella named Jim to help out. Well, this crew was great, and we cast some the tracks. We searched the area for days, and a fellow by the name of Bob T. He had come by with more casting stuff and searched the area very thoroughly, so much so he even found where the creature had walked up an impossible hill and sat down to watch what we were doing at the site after she had gotten away from us. Well, finally, after no more sightings or activity, we gathered up all the evidence that we had. We had to head back to Washington. I had sent the film out for developing, and they called me down to view it for the first time. There, for the very first time, I got a good look at the creature I filmed in Bluff Creek that day. I didn't get the creature at the log pile like I expected, but I did manage to get several good seconds of it as it walked the sandbar and looked back at the camera. It was nearly perfect. No doubt about it, this had to be a Bigfoot. This was no person at all. I had to make me 2 copies of it right away, as I knew this would change the world's look at mankind. It took several days, but finally I had the film in hand. I put a presentation together the best I knew how, and I showed it to the scientific world of my findings. Most of them wouldn't even look, and those that did just laughed and called it a hoax. As if I had some time to play games and make stuff up. This was the discovery of a lifetime, and no one believes it's real. Finally, we took our tour on the road. Bob was not really into the roadshow game, so he stayed behind, but I tried city after city in state after state. And although many people talked about it, and it even getting on the news, Without some blood or some body part, there was no way to prove what we filmed. Finally, with my health declining, I brought everything back home once again. Our friend Renee had taken the film overseas and shown it to the British and Russian scientists, but only the Russians would even consider the idea of such a creature. And with the fanfare went away, well, to this day, people still talk about the Bigfoot of Bluff Creek. Sadly, Roger died not too long after that part of the story ended. His wife Patricia holds the rights to the film, and for the right amount of money, she'll let you put it in your Bigfoot video too. We still argue if Patty, the Bigfoot film that day, is a real or it's a hoax, and no one can still prove it either way, even with all of the technology updates in place. Thanks for listening. I'm Reverend Jeff, and may the Squatch be with you.